So welcome everyone. I've had a question come in on chapter 16, 17. What, since there's a lot of different items to cover, what would I suggest if you were going to do just some of them and not all of them? So 16, 17, what I would probably do here is definitely 16.4.6, 16.5.1, and then 17.8.2. Those three in the packet tracers. And I would definitely do, we're actually going to go over lab 16.4.7 in class today. So I would say packet tracer 16.4.6, 16.5.1, packet tracer 17.8.2, because it actually puts everything together in a test for you that you've gone over. So those three packet tracers. And then as far as labs go, I would honestly say the best one, just do the two labs that are on Netlabs, 16.4.7 and 16.5.2, because those two are really the big issues, especially since today I'm going to talk about configuring network devices with SSH. And then next week, I would expect Brian or Michael to go over 16.5.2, because it talks about some of the items of securing your routers and switches, such as setting a minimum password length for your passwords, setting timeout on the line console and those types of things. So again, I would suggest if you were going to do just a couple of the ones from 16 and 17, do packet tracer 16.4.6, 16.5.1, packet tracer 17.8.2, and then the two labs that are on Netlabs, 16.4.7 and 16.5.2. Okay, does that help? I'm trying to find, where did my little board? Can y'all see my screen, by the way? Does everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Let me close my email so that nothing's popping up in there. We don't have to worry about that. All right. So one of the things I want to do, I wanted to cover this real quickly. What we have about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left in class. And I want to make sure everyone is very clear on what you need to do to finish this course. First off, take all the module exams. They're all on. Remember, you can take them up to 10 times. They do not have to be reset in order for you to take them. I would suggest trying to score at least a 70 or higher on them before you move on. So try to score 70 or higher, but we're not going to hold you to that. If you get in a hurry and you score 60 on one of them and don't have time to go back over it, we're not going to be jumping down your throat on that. Complete roughly 25 PTs and labs. So kind of split them between the PTs and labs. And again, we're not going to go in and go, oh, you did 23, we're going to fail you. No, we're just looking to make sure you've done a good amount of the labs and the packet tracers, enough that we feel like you're comfortable with the materials and you can work and use these with your students. I strongly recommend, honestly, of course, before you teach this class, make sure you've done every single packet tracer and every single lab, because, or at least looked over them. Otherwise, you are not going to be prepared to teach your students. All right. Take the course feedback, which is turned on. Take the final written exam in Netlabs, which I have turned on again for the next 7 days. And it's only on for 7 days. So realize that every 7 days we'll have to re-enable it. But we will keep that on for you and you can take it. And then finally, take the skills assessment hands-on final in netlabs.stanley.edu. I've gone over this before, but when you get in there and you schedule this exam, on the paper for the exam, it says, here are a couple different networks to use. You should use the first network, which is a 192 network, to do your subnetting. The lab also asks that you wait and your instructor checks off certain areas. We don't do that when you do it in this online format. You complete the entire lab, tell your instructor you finished it. Your instructor will go in and look at it, and then we'll grade and let you know whether or not you passed or not. So we can see every single keystroke you put in Netlabs. So we're able to see your final configs, and we're able to see every single keystroke you put in. So we can grade the final exam pretty easily. We also do want you to upload that to into Netlabs onto the upload for the hands-on skills assessment, which if you'll look down here, it should be right. Where's it here? Here, ITN skills. Here you'll upload it. Okay. So we've had one person submit it so far. So make sure you fill it in and you upload it. These other skills assessments you see here, packet tracer skills assessments, you do not have to do that. those are there if you want to practice using those before you do your actual hands-on, which is to be found on the Netlabs system. Are there any questions about what you are expected to do to finish this course?
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry, Kelly.
What you got done?
I just wanted to make sure when we do the hands-on, there's nothing that we need to do to actually load it into Netlabs, correct?
You will fill out on the document. There's some information that you need to fill in, certain
Right.
sections. Fill
Mhm.
those in and then upload that to this right here, this ITN final skills. So just like you did with all your other labs, you'll do the lab, fill it in and upload it right here.
Okay.
That also lets us know, Donnie, that you've done it so that we can go and check in Netlabs. If for some reason you accidentally forget, don't tell us you've done it. We can always look here and say, oh, well, Donnie turned it in. So we'll go check on Netlabs and see what you've got. Okay. Any other questions about that? So yes, there is. We do want you to fill out the information that's in the questions that are on the final skills assessment and upload that just like you have with all your other labs. Any other questions? Okay. Well, what I want to do a couple things. First off, I have scheduled lab 1647, so I've got that up and running. And this lab is configuring SSH. But before I do that, I want to real quickly, I want to actually do a bonus for you. I'm gonna give you a bonus episode. And what I'm going to do is this. I want to go ahead and show you a little bit about IPv6. I'm going to take 2001:DB8:ACAD:, and I'm going to subnet this /48. I'm going to subnet it, and I'm going to use subnet 10 and 11, but I'm just going to use subnet 10. So I'm going to go 2001:DB8:ACAD::A. Remember, that's 10 because this uses hexadecimal. : 1/64. That's the IP address that I am going to place onto router 1's gig 001. So let's go over here and let's go into router 1, and I'm going to go first do show IP int brief. One of my favorite commands. You'll see I've already got an IPv4 address on here, but if I do a show IPv6 int brief, you'll notice there's no IPv6 addresses on here. So I'm going to go into, first off, we got to go into global config. I'm going to interface G001. By the way, a lot of times we'll use G001 for our interfaces that connect to LANs because of the I1, which looks like an I, which is stand for inside. So G001 a lot of times is used for the inside. G000 is used for the outside because of O for outside. Put an IPv6 address on here. IPv6 add, we're going to put 2001:ACAD::A::1/64. And I'm also going to put a link local address on here because it's just easier when I know what the link local addresses are. : 1 link local. All right. So now if I do a do show IPv6 int brief, you'll see I've got a 2001:DB8:ACAD::1 and FE80::1. So link local and a globally unique address. I'm going to jump over to PCA real quick, and I'm going to do an IP config /all. And to make it where it's a little clearer, I'm going to do actual size. Now you'll notice that even though I have an IPv6 link local address assigned, so my machine has IPv6 enabled, but I don't have a global address showing up here. So, you know, I don't have anything with 2001:DB8:ACAD. Can anybody tell me why I'm not seeing that? I've got an IP address over here on R1, but why is PCA not through the Slack process? Remember, stateless address auto configuration should be that PCA will now go find that the router has an IPv6 global address on it and pull itself an IP address in that particular range. Well, why is that not happening right now? Can anybody think about what Michael talked about, one of the things that had to be configured before it would work?
We need to enable some unicast routing.
Correct. You've got it, even though IPv6 is on the interface. Amar, you're right. We haven't turned on the ability to actually respond or use those ICMP router advertisements and router solicitations. So we need to do IPv6 unicast routing. Now, at this point, what should happen, and it may take a few minutes, but it eventually here, we will actually pull a 2001 DB8 address. I may have to shut down and unshut the interface. I may have to bring the interface up and down. Let me do that real quickly. So I'm just gonna disable the interface for a second, and I'm gonna bring the interface back up. Now, it would have eventually done it. I'm just not patient. I'm saying it's going to do it. Nope, there it is. Yep, 2001 DB8 ACAD. So notice now that this PC has pulled itself a globally unique address in the 2001 DB8 ACAD 10 subnet. And you'll notice that it has randomly generated itself an interface ID. Now, how do I know this is randomly generated?
It doesn't match the MAC address.
Well, that it does, yeah, it doesn't have FFFE in the middle. So if it was using the EUI 64 standard, it would have FFFE in the middle. And also it doesn't match the MAC address, which is part of the EUI 64 standard. It splits the MAC address, puts FFFE in the middle, and switches the 7th bit from the left. So this is Slack in action. And all we had to do was put an IP address on the router and enable unicast routing. And at this point, the router is talking IPv6 to hosts on its network. So pretty neat, pretty easy to do. Any questions about that? All right, it's really that simple. By the way, 99% of the commands that you use, if you want to do for instance, drop out here, do a show IP route, you'll notice I've got one connected local address. Almost every command for IPv6 is just use show IPv6 route instead of show IP. You just put IPv6 and it will show you the different routes that are available on the devices. And also almost every command is just IPv6 where you would use IP on the other command. All right. Now, the next thing I want to show you, we're going to show you why you need to be using Telnet. Yep, you're right, Mike. Windows 10 randomly generates the host portion of the address. They didn't used to do that. For a while, they were actually using EUI 64, and they stopped doing that because of the possibility of being able to be tracked back to a particular MAC address. So what I want to show you first is we are actually going to, as part of what we're doing here, I'm going to start Wireshark. And I am going to start a capture on the Intel here. So I'm on the right adapter. So start doing that. And I'm going to go, got a whole lot of ICMP v6 traffic going on here. But I am going to Telnet to, and by the way, I've already set up the switch here to have the IP address 1.11 and configured the B2I line on it. So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go to 192.168.1.11, which is the switch. It's going to ask me for my password. And lo and behold, I'm sitting in here and I'm in. Okay. Now I'm going to go back down and I'm going to stop Wireshark and I'm going to filter by Telnet. Now let's take a peek here at what's going on with Telnet. So here's Telnet, and you can see here's where it's asking user access verification, prompting me for my password. And then notice what happens. The password, you keep going down through here, you'll see external data being sent. And then next thing you know, we're going to be looking here, it's going to be like, oh, CISCO. So So there's the password that was just sent. So if I was capturing this data, and you'll notice the next thing it's going to show me, it shows the S1 prompt. And then it's going to show me type enable, E-N-A-B, and it shows that it sends it twice. It's kind of weird, but it does. L-L-E-E enable. So basically there's enable. And then look what just got captured. It says, what's the password for enable? Well, the password is C-L-A-S-S. So if someone gets access to your network and can run a sniffer on it, Telnet is evil because they can grab your passwords easily. Sorry, folks. Let me do not disturb my phone. For some reason, it's blowing up. So we never want to use Telnet on a modern network. So what we're going to implement and what this entire lab is about is setting up SSH. And I've gone over this once before. I want to go over it again because it's so important for what we're doing, and it's part of your hands-on final. So you need to know how to do this in the real world, first off, because it's super important to keep your network secure. And second, it is part of your hands-on final. So, and not only that, guess what? It's one of the items on the CCNA exam that says configure devices for SSH. So this shows up on the CCNA exam 100%. It's an item. It's an actual literal exam objective. So we're going to look at how we do this. Now, I just created a little, one of my favorite things here, which is just a little Word file or skill notepad file on what you got to do SSH configuration. It's really simple. One, you need to set your host name because the host name actually becomes part of the seed for the key. Set your domain name because that's also part of the key. Now, depending on what iOS version you may have, sometimes it's domain-name, sometimes it's domain no dash. Just depending on the iOS version, I put it with a dash here. I can't remember. We'll find out in here in just a second which one it is on these routers. Create a local user account because we're going to be, when we log in, this is not an absolute requirement, but it's a good thing to do because we want to be able to log in using a username and password. You also learn in the last chapter about how you can actually set privilege levels for a username or an account that you create. This local user account by default is going to log in with no privilege level or other, basically just user exec mode privilege level. But you need to create that. So we're going to use that particular account to log in with. We're going to generate our crypto keys because we have to have a pair of public-private keys that can be shared during the SSH process. And then we have to set our VTY lines on our devices to accept SSH. So we're going to say transport input SSH, and then we're going to do login local, which forces it to look in this local database. Do not put this command if you have not created a local user account because you will lock yourself out of your devices. We saw that at the National Skills USA contest. Somebody put login local on their console and did not have a local account. If you're on a router, by the way, you can overcome that by going to the auxiliary port. So plug in auxiliary port, and if it hasn't been shut down or not configured, you can get in with the auxiliary port. So that's just a quick aside there on that one. But let's do this. Let's set our host name on R1. We're going to set this up on R1. So we've already set our host name. We're going to set our domain name. So domain dash name. Nope. IP domain name. All right, so I gotta go fix my thing. I forgot the IP in front of it. IP, and it has this particular version of iOS has no dash. IP domain name cisco.com or whatever you want it to be. Okay. Now we're going to create a local user account. Username, admin, password. Now let me show you what you can do here. Username admin. We're going to do, you could have done a privilege level. So we could actually put a privilege level. If we did a privilege level, we could actually set a privilege level from 0 to 15. If you do 15, it will actually bypass the enable secret password and drop you into enable our privilege exec mode. So I'm gonna show you this both ways. I'm gonna do username admin, password of Cisco, and I'm gonna do a username admin, super admin, privilege 15, password class. Okay. So now, next thing I got to do is generate my keys. By the way, do show ver. If it is not a K9 image, you cannot generate keys because it does not have the cryptographic functions on it. So if you're ever trying to do this on a device and it won't let you do it, check to make sure you got a K9 image, because K9 is what is needed for your cryptographic functions. So crypto key generate, and we're going to create RSA keys, which are public key pairs. I use 1024 just for poops and grins. All right, then we're going to go into line V2I 04. We're going to do login local, and we're going to do transport SSH, transport input SSH. And then we're going to drop it here and we're going to write it. Oh, we're going to write it. At this point, we have configured SSH. We've set our host name, we've set our domain name, we've created a local user account. We actually created 2 of them. I'll show you how those are different here in a minute. Generate our crypto keys and set our VTY lines to accept SSH. So let's go to PCA, and we are going to open up Putty, and we're going to go to SSH, and we're going to go to 192.168.1.1. We get prompted. It says these keys are not cached, so do you want to cache the public keys for this particular entity? I say yes. We're going to log in as admin, the password of Cisco. And you'll notice, look at where we're sitting. We're now sitting at user exec mode. So we still have to type enable, and put in our enable password, if I get it in here right, to get into user exec mode. Okay, it's all handy dandy. But watch what happens when I do the same thing. 2.168.1.1, 1.1. But I'm gonna log in as super admin. What happens? See the difference? I am sitting in user exec mode because I gave that user account, that local account, privilege level 15, which is privilege, not user, I'm in privilege exec mode. So I gave it 15, which is privilege exec. So instead of having to use this as a super admin, because it drops me directly into the ability to have full control over the device. So we have 2 separate user accounts. We created one for admin that we'll give out to our lowly admins that we don't want to be able to do anything. We don't give them the enable secret password either. So they can just go check a couple things. And then we create ourselves a super admin account so that we can get in and ensure that we have the ability to do whatever we want. And by the way, the only difference between that and this command is we set a privilege level. And down the road, you'll actually learn that you can actually move commands or to different privilege levels. And it should be able to be shortened like that. Pretty sure that's what you can shorten it to. But you'll notice that we can actually move commands around to different privilege levels, so we can set up different level accounts on the devices, and we're able to go in and give each individual user or our different users different permissions. But honestly, real world, what we do is we go in and we use something like Cisco's ICE, which is ISE, not ICE, but Identity Services Engine. And it's set up to where when you log into your Cisco devices, it automatically looks and sees what commands you're allowed to run, and will only let you run those commands on the device. So in a real enterprise, we don't even use local accounts. We use our Windows database or whatever normal AD we have, or a database, and that is used by ICE, which is Cisco ISE, to allow for control on network.
Is ICE the replacement for Quad A?
It's the replacement for what used to be Cisco.
TACAX?
No, it's not. TACAS and Radius Surge, but TACAS is actually integrated into ICE. ICE is the replacement for Cisco's old Cisco Works like 2000. So it actually replaced that. And ICE has been integrated into Cisco's DNA Center. So it's all one kind of integrated thing. what's the purpose of the domain name if we have the IP address? Mike, the domain name is used to generate the crypto keys. So my understanding is in order to generate these keys, it has to have a seed. And these two items here are what are used to generate the seed for the crypto keys. That's my understanding of why the domain name has to be set. So that's the only reason. Donnie, did I answer your question about ICE?
Yeah, you did.
Here, the identity servicing engine, like I said, it's Cisco's. And there's an entire, your job could be nothing but ICE. Michael, y'all ran ICE at the hospital, didn't you? Or something?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So on my the last couple of months before I left, we was implementing ICE, so we had to go through a lot of the way our network was set up. We had a networking side and a security side. So the security side was it was one guy over there who was standing up ICE, him and an outside partner. So they were standing it up, and pretty much on the networking side, we pretty much got the grunt end. We would get all the issues and have to fix the issues with it.
Yeah.
But ICE is needless to say that guy that stood it up for the security team. So he just left because he got ICE under his belt and he got hired by a managed services company. So that ICE pretty much just made him valuable. Yeah. But it's real good. It's so good. It was almost too good, because there would be plenty of times I would get waking up in the middle of the night just because of a PC might not have the correct configuration on the port for ICE, and it wouldn't let it use the network.
Yeah, so ICE can actually do the automated threat containment. It can actually look at say someone connects a PC to it and it doesn't have the correct antivirus engine or database. It can actually lock it out of the network. And same thing with, like wireless access. A lot of times ICE is used for your identity solution for wireless to be able to pass through the login information. So.
Yeah, pretty much one system for everything. It handled the phones and everything. So
it does.
So
it's expensive.
Yeah, so it actually requires, and I apologize for the dogs in the background.
Oh, it's no
Stop.
problem. No problem. That's not a
So
problem.
it actually requires like a I guess a back-end engine running on a server or something like that.
yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you've either got to
Okay.
run it. You either got to run like a full ICE server on a Cisco server, or you got to run an ICE VM on a server. So yeah, you've got to have everything running in the background. Yeah, it's like I said, it's pretty technical to set up, but it's one of those things that a lot of bigger businesses are going to it because of the fact that it's so useful. And I don't think a lot of it's integrated with this threat defense stuff and DNA Center, where they're trying to do automated their AMP engine, which is their anti-malware policy, and everything is integrated with ICE. So there's a lot of things rely on ICE as an integral part. In fact, like DNA Center, you've got to have ICE to be able to run DNA Center. DNA Center is at the Cisco network as a cloud type automated solution. So you've got to have all these. It honestly, in many ways, doesn't make sense for anybody to roll out ICE and these types of things unless it's a fairly big environment, just because of the cost. ICE is not cheap, but once it's rolled out,
Yes, that is, yeah.
it's super expensive.
Yeah, that ICE and DNA Center. Yep.
DNA Center is insanely expensive, and then combine the two. But like I said, if your environment's big enough, it can truly help with well, once you get it in correctly. If you don't install it correctly, it's nothing but a pain in the rump. If you get it installed correctly, it can be a game changer for medium-sized to large networks, no doubt. me see here, Indiana State University. Yeah, you know, they got 70, 80,000 users, so maybe more. So that for them, it makes sense. For smaller places, probably not. So 12,000 students and 1,000 academic. I thought I had more than that, but they have 50,000 endpoints. There's where you really get your, but see what they're doing. Their identity services engine plus the secure firewall and all of that to put together. So, yeah. So, and you can go look at that if you want to. It's kind of an interesting thing to take a peek at. All right. Any questions about the difference between super admin and the way I did that, just to give you a little show there? I'm gonna go ahead and go into to the switch and do the same thing. So let's go in here and so first off, let's do a show ver, make sure it's got a canine image. It does have a canine image, so we can do it. So we're gonna hit this. We'll do config T. Again, we're gonna do IP domain name cisco.com. And then we're gonna do username admin Cisco username super admin privilege 15 pass class crypto key gotta do crypto key generate RSA. We'll do, and by the way, you can get bigger than 1024. You can do up to 4096. So the only thing 4096 will do is take more time, and it will obviously be a stronger key and a bigger key that has to be moved across the two. So we'll see what happens here. I may have messed up. It may take 10 minutes for this thing to generate 4096 keys. Shouldn't take that long though, but we'll see. You'll notice it takes longer. Like I said, I did this one time on a PIX firewall, a little 506 firewall, and I did 4096 in a production environment, and locked the firewall up and quit passing traffic until it actually generated the key. So I don't suggest doing this during production time. Come on now, generate the key. It's not that big a key. There we go. Oh, maybe not. While we're waiting, any questions? You can see my example go down in flames, but you also get to see how bigger keys take a whole lot longer.
So yeah, when you were talking about why the domain name and the host name is required for the key generation, it's the same. It's a RSA standard actually. So even what the machine is actually doing is setting up a local key server.
Yep.
And key authority, I should say, and that is a part of the requirements for any key authority, that you have a host name and a domain.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Donnie.
So when you actually go in and you do like your www.stanley.edu, it's actually looking for the host name www and the domain name stanley.edu.
Let's see if I can actually see this. Yeah, here's certificate. Yeah, so it's looking for that stanley.edu. And it's also looking for a host name. Yeah. So I don't see a host name right here, but
the asterisk denotes the host name.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, there it is. That makes perfect sense. So in order to create a public-private key pair, it's just so it can meet the standard.
Yeah. Yep. So then when you actually make the connection, your client will be able to determine whether or not it's a valid certificate, or that's why you get that flag to say, hey, the certificate might not be valid because the host name isn't matching what I'm connecting to. Also,
one of the things I will tell you, it is possible to actually put true certificates and keys from an outside key source, central authority. So if your network has a central authority and you want to load in for processes like this, if you want to load in actual keys, you can do that. You can generate them and bring them into your Cisco devices instead of generating local keys like this. You notice here, this actually tells you that it's going to be s1.cisco.com. So that's
Yeah.
telling you it's combining the host name with the domain name to get it. And I did not think it would take this long to generate this key, but so.
Yeah, in a certain environment, which I shall not name, if you don't have actually matched host names when you're connecting, the policy on the local machine will not allow you to connect.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. That's what I get for trying to show a 4096. Eventually it'll work. It may take it a while, but eventually. The good news is don't do this in the classroom. Don't make my mistakes. I'll make the mistakes for you.
So I gotta ask you something because you did bring it up. So you did mention that you can't lock yourself out if you don't add the transport when you're setting up everything, when you're setting up the host, your username, and you're setting it up so that you can use username and password to connect. The last time I took this course, which was in the 1900s, they did cover how to actually recover from that process on both a switch and the router. Is that covered at all or is that not a focus of
It is covered later on. There is a definite password recovery procedure for Cisco devices. For a Cisco router, one of the things you've got to do, first off, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. If I do a show run, if I would have put onto, you'll notice on line console 0, I put login, and I don't have a password here now, but if I put a password in, but if I put login local on line con 0 and did not have a local user account, I would have locked myself out of the console port. Okay. Now, password recovery for a router and a switch are very different. What time is it? Yeah, I got a little bit of time. I can actually show it to you. Let's see if my switch is still generating. Yeah, so I'll show you password recovery. So there's a couple ways you can do it. First off, with this, we can just do password recovery. Okay, so we'll actually do a password recovery for you. And what this does is this. For a Cisco router, and you need to look up your model, but for most Cisco routers, what you do is you turn them off and turn them back on, and you hit control break or send control break, control break, control break right as the router's booting up. That will then get you into a ROM-mon mode. In ROM-mon mode, you can change the config register from, if you look by default, the config register is usually 2102. So down here at the very bottom, if you do a show ver, you'll see that the config register is 2102. It's 2142 right now because they bypassed the startup config when Netlabs started the router. But it's set to 2102, which basically says don't bypass the startup config file. But if I reboot this and make the config register 2142, it will bypass the startup config file and make the router appear to be blank. So let's imagine this. Let's imagine I put in a enable secret password and I've forgotten it. I don't know what it is. So I can't get in my enable secret, or I can't get in my console, anything. What I could do is this. I could do a password recovery. And what this will do is, let's see in here, it's going to actually, oh, it's doing it. It did it for me. Okay. That's different. Let me try something different. Okay. So it did, it actually, it's got the ability to cheat. That was a cheat. So we're not going to let it cheat. Let's do it like this. Let's bypass. So I'm gonna actually turn it off because you can send a break. So I'm going to power off the router. So the router is now off. It actually was just turned off in our data center. If I can hit enter all day long, and it's not going to do anything, but I will now power it on. So it's power on, and I'm going to start sending the break key to it. So in the real world, I'd be hitting control break, control break, control break on the keyboard, or I would be doing, I would be setting inside of Putty. You can right click on Putty and do send break. So there's a couple ways you can do it. There we go. Now say I'm in RMON mode. So this is a special mode that you can do for password recovery. So at this point, I would set conf reg to 0 by 2142. That tells it bypass the startup config file. Hit I, oops, and I is for initialize or reset, basically, it turns it back on. I'm gonna let it boot, and it's gonna boot up and be blank. But the thing is, the config file is still there. The startup config file is still there. Hopefully, I think I saved it. Pretty sure I did. So the config file is still there. So what we can do is we can bypass it on this startup. And then we can actually go into privileged exec mode, copy that back over and make changes to our password. So I'll show you how to do that. We got to let this whole thing boot though. So it's going to take a little bit for it to boot. So let's let it boot. Aha, let's go and see if, nope, this thing's still making keys. Golly, it's insane. And so this is the password recovery for a 4000 series. And almost all Cisco routers, the lower end routers, use this same password recovery system. Cisco switches are different. You take the power off of a Cisco switch, hold down the mode button, and put the power back on for the 2960s. And then for anything else, if there's other types of switches, you just have to look up the password recovery method for those particular switches. What this will eventually do is we're going to end up with no config and no passwords. Cannot believe that's locked that switch up. So this is the, by the way, anybody know what's going on when you're seeing all these hashes? All those little hash marks?
It's decompressing the image.
That's exactly right. It's decompressing the image from Flash, taking the iOS image out of Flash and bringing it into memory. So it can be run in memory. Just like your operating system for Windows goes and gets your operating system off your hard drive and decompresses it and puts it into RAM to run it. So the image is being, it actually does a hash to validate the image is correct and hasn't been corrupted in some way, form, or fashion. Image is validated. Here in a minute, we should drop, actually it should ask us for, should be at the actual startup. So like it should say, do you want to continue with setup or do you want to bypass setup? And I'm going to say bypass. Let it continue to boot. Let's see if we're still stuck over here. We're still stuck. This is a skill that's very good to learn because your students are going to lock you out of your routers and switches. So you're going to need to learn how to do this. And you will eventually too be doing something and accidentally lock yourself out of a device. We had a student at Skills USA accidentally not put in a login local, did not know how to do a password recovery, and then figured out on their own how to do a password recovery. I was so impressed. I actually offered them a free class because I was super impressed that they figured out how to do the password recovery on their own. They just kept messing around. They said, I figured out how to do it. And it actually didn't take them that long. I was shocked and amazed. All right, come on now.
But for the routers, you can still only do the password recovery through the console port, correct?
Correct. Yep. So now I'm gonna finish up SSH on this switch. By the way, I'm just gonna do line C2I04 login local transport input SSH do show run. And just make sure I got everything here. Admin's in there, all that's in there, so that's working. So now I'm going to go. That closed unexpectedly because I rebooted the router. Let's go into Putty. Let's connect to 192.168. 1.11, and we should get. Notice how much bigger the key is, how much longer it's taking to download the key. So.
And the default SSH that it uses now is version 2.
Version 2, 1.9, I believe. It's actually 2.0 on this, but I think on the router, it will actually show you here in a minute. It'll show 2.0. Notice how the router is blank. Okay, so there's nothing here. But if I do a directory, a dir, you'll see there is a startup.config. There's a startup file. There should be one. Actually, it's being hidden because it's. Let's do a copy start to running config. And notice what happens here. Now I'm inside, but because even though if I didn't know my passwords, at this point I'm in privileged exec mode and I moved my config over. So at this point, I can do a config T and do an enable secret class or whatever I want it to be, or line con. So at this point, I bypass line con 0, password of Cisco, login. Okay. But now one of the things I need to do is this. I need to set the config register back to 0 by 2102. Because if I don't, what'll happen is this. If I don't do that, it will continually bypass the startup config every time I reboot the router. So if you ever get a router that your students have configured and they boot it up and it keeps going to blank, do a show vir and make sure someone hasn't set the config register to 2142. Okay, because at 2142, that 4 designates it will bypass the startup config file in NVRAM. But now this is 2102 at the next. So at this point, I do a do show IPv6 int brief. I should have my IPv6 stuff. Show IPv6 int brief. I should have my IPv6 stuff in here. Show IP int brief. Should have that. Okay, so they're up. So that was a quick password recovery. Folks, I'm gonna step away for just a second. Michael, Brian, answer any questions. I will be back in a moment.
Anybody got any questions, concerns, any issues with the labs, exams? Also, have you signed up, put your name on the roster to be for the CCNA 2 class? Kelly's going to offer. All right, don't forget to do that, Dr. Reynolds. Just out of curiosity, where is if you don't mind, put where you're what, and let's say what state you're located in. Kelly, myself, and Michael, we're in North Carolina. I know a few of you are in North Carolina. Okay, Virginia, Florida. Oh, so we're definitely covering the South.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
All right, I'm back. Yeah, we definitely are covering the South. One quick thing, just in case you missed class Monday, don't forget, if you want the free CCNA 2 class, make sure your name before class is over is on this CCNA 2 sign up discussion forum. So just need your name. Make sure you've done that so that I can get you signed up for the free CCNA 2 class. If for some reason, I think there's 1 or 2 of you who may be taking both 2 and 3, I can get you both for free. So just be aware of that. So make sure that's, yeah, mainly you're still in St. Thomas. Yeah, I'd like to go to St. Thomas.
Now Monday, Kelly, I got that cohort starting, so I don't know if I'm gonna try to be on it for Michael may have to cover the class Monday.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, Michael Bryan's got the Navy class Monday, so you may have to cover Monday yourself.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Jafar, we'll get you signed up for both. That's not a problem. Yeah, I did get it, and just got to make sure I remember to do it. If I don't, for some reason, get you in both, email me again and gripe, and we'll get you in both. So yeah, we got a big Navy set of classes coming up starting next week. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any other questions from anybody? Again, next week I'll be traveling. I'll try to maybe do something like a phone thing from my stuff at Gen Con on Wednesday, but there's not a whole lot of cool stuff on Wednesday. Neat stuff starts the days after. Yeah, it's in Indianapolis. So
Justin was supposed to, my son, my youngest son was supposed to have his be at the first race, which is Indianapolis Sunday, and they're going to hold him off one time because this is a road course and they're pitting backwards. So he'll actually start being a gas man the following week.
Cool. Amar, yes, CCNA 3 will be offered in the spring. That is correct. CCNA 2 class, what does it cover? Good question. I'll show you real quickly. CCNA 2 class is probably my favorite class. It covers VLANs, inter VLAN routing. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen now. I'm a doofus. Hold on a minute. Now you'll see it. So VLANs, inter VLAN routing, troubleshooting layer 3 routing, STP and Ether channel, setting up Ether channels, troubleshooting Ether channels, so PHP, LACP, configuring dynamic IP address allocation on IPv6 networks. So you'll be looking at how Slack works with stateful DHCP and stateless DHCP, IPv6 and IPv4 static routes. Switch to mitigate LAN attacks, so how to do port security. And then there's a good amount of items on using wireless LAN controllers and layer 2 best security practices on wireless on a network. So this is one of my absolute favorite courses that we teach. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I may have one I can actually show you. Yeah, right here's one. So kind of show you the concepts, inter VLAN routing. So I can just pull it up here. So basic device configuration. So we start out again, just basic switch and router configuration as your first thing you do in chapter 1 or module 1. Then we teach you about switching concepts, VLANs, how to route between VLANs. So router on a stick, old style routing with multiple ports, and also multi-layer switch routing, spanning tree concepts, Ether channel, DHCP and Slack, DHCP v6, first hop redundancy protocols, so HSRP, GLBP, global load balancing protocol, and BRRP, all the way down through how to do LAN security, WAN concepts, routing concepts, and then troubleshooting static routes. So it's a good, I really like it because we get to creating our VLANs. We start actually building networks the way they are in the real world in this particular section. So notice it's still 16 chapters, 16 modules, but there's just not as much content. It's not as deep. I think it's a really good course, personally, my favorite. So.
Hey, Kelly, there was a question from Dr. Michael Reynolds about will we only get access to the Cisco curriculum upon passing the CCNA cert exam?
Nope, that is not correct. As soon as you are accredited for this course, you can teach CCNA 1. So if you finish this course by August the 14th, if you want to teach this course at your school starting August the 15th, as soon as we accredit you, you are able to teach this course. So you will be able to create yourself and your students a CCNA 1 course as soon as you're accredited. Yeah, and then as soon as you're accredited for CCNA 2, you can teach CCNA 2 and so on. In fact, it is not required that you must take and pass the CCNA in order to teach in the Cisco Academy. That used to be a rule. It is no longer. It's a rule for us as instructor trainers. We must have our CCNA, but you do not have to have it. I strongly recommend it simply because practice what you preach. But it is not required. You will be able to teach CCNA 1 as soon as you're accredited for this course. And Amar, if you really want to do CCNA 2 and 3 in the fall, as long as you have the bandwidth to do it and the time to do it, I will approve that. You just have to let me know, send me an email, let me know, and I'll get you signed up for both. Just be aware that is a lot of work.
And no, I thought signing for CCNA 3 for the spring.
Oh, no. Just wait on that, because we don't have those classes created for the spring yet. So no, you'll wait and sign up for those. Once we get toward the end of CCNA 2, we'll do basically everybody that's in CCNA 2 that wants CCNA 3, we'll get you in CCNA 3.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All righty, I'm gonna stop sharing now. I'm going to stop the recording.